The October rain pounded mercilessly against the windshield as Elena Carson's weathered sedan crawled through the Georgia mud. Each wiper stroke revealed another stretch of desolation, rusted mailboxes tilting like forgotten sentinels' trailers with patched roofs and puddles the color of strong coffee swallowing what remained of the gravel road. "Are we there yet, Mommy?" Sophie's small voice carried from the back seat where her wheelchair was carefully secured beside her. Elena glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting her 6-year-old daughter's eyes, Michael's eyes, and forced brightness into her voice. "Almost, sweetheart. Just a little further now." The dashboard clock read 4:47 p.m., but the storm clouds had already stolen the day's remaining light. Elena's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, her wedding ring, the only possession she hadn't pawned, catching what little illumination filtered through the gloom. In her purse lay an envelope containing $300 in worn bills, her last $300 in the world, the money she'd saved by skipping meals, by diluting Sophie's apple juice, by washing their clothes in the sink with hand soap, by keeping the thermostat at 60 degrees until their apartment manager had shut off the heat entirely. $300 that would either save them or become the final chapter in their downward spiral. The sign for Riverbank Mobile Home Park emerged from the mist, its letters faded and crooked. Below it, barely legible, "Last stop before nowhere." Someone had tried to paint over this addition, but the pessimistic proclamation refused to disappear completely. Elena eased the car into what passed for a parking area, her tires sinking into mud that seemed determined to claim anything that ventured too close. "Stay here, Sophie. I'll check in with the manager first." The office was a single-wide trailer with an American flag hanging limply from a pole on the tiny porch. A hand-painted sign in the window announced "Office" in bold red letters. Elena knocked, then pushed open the door when a gruff voice called from within. Harold Jenkins sat behind a metal desk, his Vietnam veteran cap pulled low over eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by anything new. A portable heater glowed orange at his feet, fighting the damp chill that seemed to seep through the walls. "You must be Carson," he said, not looking up from the ledger before him. "The teacher." "Former teacher," Elena corrected gently. "I'm here about the trailer for rent. We spoke on the phone." Now Jenkins looked up, his weathered face a map of decades lived hard. "Number 17, furthest one back where the property meets the woods." He studied her with narrowed eyes. "You sure about this? Lady place hasn't been lived in for 2 years. Last tenant left in a hurry." Elena set her jaw. "I'm sure. You said $300 cash in advance." Jenkins nodded slowly. "That I did. No refunds, though. No complaints either. You take it as is." "What happened to the last tenant?" Elena asked, something in his tone triggering the historian in her, the part that listened for the stories between words. Jenkins shifted in his chair, the springs creaking a metallic protest. "Raymond Miller, Iraq vet, 2 tours. Came back different like a lot of boys do." He paused, scratching his beard. "Started saying he heard voices from under the floor." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "Voices?" "Said they were singing sometimes, crying other times." Jenkins shrugged. "Found him one morning sitting in his truck at 3 a.m., everything he owned packed up. Said he wasn't going back inside for anything in the world." He pulled a key from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. "Probably just the wind in the pipes. Old place like that makes noise. But if you're the superstitious type..." Elena took the key, its weight somehow greater than its size. "I'm not superstitious, Mr. Jenkins. I'm desperate. There's a difference." As she turned to leave, Jenkins called after her. "That little girl of yours, the one in the wheelchair. Trailer's not set up for that. You'll need a ramp." "I'll manage," Elena replied, her voice steady, despite the knot forming in her stomach. "There's some old pallets behind the maintenance shed. Might help." Jenkins offered, his gruffness momentarily softened. "And Carson, most folks around here mind their own business. You need help, though, you holler." Back at the car, Sophie had fogged up a small circle on the window and was drawing shapes with her finger. She looked up as Elena opened the door, raindrops spattering the leather-bound journal in her lap, a gift from Michael on their last anniversary. "Did we get it, Mom? Do we have a home again?" Elena swallowed hard against the lump in her throat. Home. Their apartment with its sunny kitchen and Sophie's room painted with clouds had been home. The house before that, with Michael's workshop in the garage and the maple tree in the yard, had been home. This. Yes, baby, we have a place to stay. She drove slowly to the far end of the park, the car's headlights cutting through sheets of rain to reveal number 17, a 1976 Skyline single-wide that had clearly seen better decades. One end rested on cinder blocks, the other on wooden beams darkened with rot. The metal siding was mottled with rust, and at least 2 windows were covered with plywood. But it was a roof. It was shelter. It was all they could afford. Elena parked as close as possible and turned to Sophie. "I'm going to check inside first, then come back for you. Okay, I need to make sure it's safe." Sophie nodded solemnly, her dark curls, so like Michael's, bouncing with the movement. "Be careful of monsters, Mom." "Always am, sweetheart." The key stuck in the lock, requiring a firm jiggle before the door swung open with a metallic groan. The smell hit her first, mildew dust and something earthier, like the scent of a basement after heavy rain. Elena fumbled for a light switch, finding one that surprisingly worked, illuminating a scene of abandonment. The main room held a sagging couch, a coffee table on its side, and scattered papers, notebooks filled with cramped handwriting and newspaper clippings taped to torn sheets. The kitchenette was small but intact, its appliances dating to the Reagan era. A short hallway led to what would be 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The floor felt soft in places, the linoleum and carpet hiding water damage beneath. Elena tested each step carefully, mapping the danger zones in her mind. Sophie would need clear paths for her wheelchair. In what would become Sophie's bedroom, the smaller of the 2 but closer to the bathroom, Elena found more of Raymond Miller's abandoned possessions. A military duffel bag containing neatly folded clothes, a box of paperbacks, mostly military history and survival guides, and more notebooks, these stacked on a small desk in the corner. Curiosity pulled her to them. The top one was labeled Sounds Nightlog in precise block letters. Elena flipped it open, finding dated entries March 3rd, 2:17 a.m. Singing again. Low voices like a hymn. Checked outside, nothing. Sound definitely coming from below. March 5th, 1:03 a.m. Children crying. Recorded on phone but playback just static. Am I losing it? March 8th, 3:22 a.m. Voices clearer tonight. Woman's voice saying, "Hush now," and "This way." Made diagram of where sounds strongest. See attached. The attached page showed a crude floor plan with X marks in several locations, the largest concentration in the small bedroom. Elena set the notebook down, a chill running through her despite the stuffiness of the trailer. Raymond Miller had been methodical in his documentation, not the ramblings of someone delusional, but the careful notes of a man trying to understand something beyond his experience. She continued her inspection, noting the water stains on the ceiling where the roof had leaked, the places where the floor would need reinforcement, the windows that would need better sealing before winter. It was a disaster, but a disaster they could afford. Back at the car, Sophie waited patiently, her wheelchair folded beside her on the back seat. Elena helped her daughter into the chair, then covered her with a raincoat as they made the treacherous journey to the trailer's door. "It's not much," Elena said, fighting to keep the apology from her voice as they entered. "But we'll make it ours." Sophie wheeled herself slowly around the main room, taking in their new circumstances with the uncanny perceptiveness she'd developed since the accident. "It's okay, Mom. We're together. That's what matters." Over the next hour, Elena brought in their meager possessions. 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of Sophie's books, and toys, Elena's teaching materials she couldn't bear to part with, and the small cooler containing their food supplies. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, and the night had fully claimed the sky by the time she made her final trip to the car. While Sophie sorted her books onto a small shelf, Elena examined the trailer more thoroughly. The bathroom pipes groaned but worked. The refrigerator hummed to life when plugged in. The stove had only 2 functional burners, but that was 2 more than they'd had in the motel last week. She saved the soft spots in the floor for last kneeling to press her hand against the worst area in what would be Sophie's room. The carpet was unsalvageable, reeking of mildew, and worse. Elena began pulling it up, starting at the edge where it had already separated from the wall. As she worked, she found more of Raymond's notebooks scattered beneath the furniture and along the baseboards. This one labeled simply, "Below." April 17th. Found historical records at library. This land was once part of Blackwood Plantation. Colonel Josiah Blackwood, one of Georgia's wealthiest slaveholders. Over 250 slaves before Sherman's march. Coincidence. April 22nd. Floor getting softer. Something underneath. Not dirt. Not the trailer undercarriage. Something else. April 25th. Dreamed of people running through darkness. Lanterns. Whispers. Woke up to sounds of chains rattling. 2:44 a.m. Elena set the notebook aside, her historian's mind whirring. Blackwood Plantation. She knew of it from her teaching days. The plantation had been massive, over 3,000 acres of cotton fields before the Civil War. Colonel Josiah Blackwood had been notorious for his harsh treatment of slaves and his outspoken defense of the institution. His plantation house had been burned during Sherman's march to the sea, and the land had been divided and sold in the decades after. Could this trailer park really sit on what was once Blackwood land? A loud crack interrupted her thoughts as her hand suddenly broke through a particularly soft section of floor. The plywood subfloor had crumbled like wet cardboard, revealing a dark space beneath. Elena jerked her hand back, heart pounding. "Mom!" Sophie called from the other room. "What was that?" "Nothing, baby. Just some old floor. Stay there, okay?" Elena shone her phone's flashlight into the hole, expecting to see dirt or the trailer's undercarriage. Instead, the beam disappeared into darkness, a space much deeper than the crawl space that should be there. She pulled away more of the rotted wood, adrenaline temporarily overcoming her exhaustion. The hole widened to reveal what appeared to be deliberately cut edges, not random rot, but a purposefully created opening that had been covered over. Within minutes, she'd exposed a 3-foot square opening with the remains of metal hinges still attached to one side, a trapdoor, and below, illuminated by her phone's light wooden steps, descended into darkness. "Sophie," Elena called, her voice unsteady. "I need you to stay in the living room for a bit longer." "Why? What did you find?" "I'm not sure yet. Just give me a few minutes." Elena's mind raced. She should call someone. The authorities, a university, anyone who could properly document what might be a historical find. But the practical part of her, the part that had been counting pennies and choosing which medications they could afford this month, whispered, "Look first. Understand what you have before others take it from you." The first step creaked, but held her weight. The air rising from below smelled of earth and age, carrying a heaviness that felt like history itself. 7 steps down each, taking her further from the present day and deeper into something forgotten. The chamber at the bottom was roughly 8 feet square, with walls of handmade brick, the irregular, slightly misshapen kind that dated to before the Civil War. The floor was hard-packed dirt, and the ceiling low enough that Elena had to stoop slightly. But it was what lined the walls that made her breath catch. Shelves had been built into the brick, not crude planks, but carefully constructed storage. Most were empty, but some held objects that had somehow survived the decades. Metal boxes spotted with rust, glass bottles with faded paper labels, ceramic containers, and in one corner, wrapped in what looked like oilcloth, several bundles. Elena approached the largest bundle with trembling hands. The oilcloth cracked at her touch, but had done its job, protecting what lay within, a leather portfolio containing papers and documents. Her phone's light caught faded ink, and she made out a date, April 12th, 1863. She sank to her knees in the dirt, carefully spreading the papers on the ground. The first was a map, hand-drawn with meticulous detail, showing the local area with names she didn't recognize. Except one. Blackwood Plantation was clearly marked, and lines led from it to various points north, each marked with symbols she couldn't decipher. The second document made her hands tremble. My dearest Martha. The terminal beneath the Blackwood house remains secure despite increased patrols. 23 souls passed through last month, bound for the northern lines, 11 men, 7 women, and 5 children. The youngest just turned 4 years. The new overseer suspects nothing, though we must remain vigilant. The codes have changed again. 3 knocks pause, 2 knocks pause, 1 knock. The response must be, the river flows north when the moon is dark. I pray this war ends soon, so we might live without these necessary deceptions. How much longer must we pretend loyalty to a cause we abhor, while risking our lives for the truth we hold dear? Your devoted brother, Thomas. Elena's breath came in short gasps. A terminal. The Underground Railroad. Here beneath what was now a rusted trailer in a forgotten corner of Georgia, people had risked everything to ferry escaped slaves to freedom. More documents revealed themselves as she carefully unwrapped the bundles. Lists of names, Moses, Ruth, Samuel, Mary, with dates beside them, and destinations, Ohio, Michigan, Canada. Some entries were marked with crosses, and Elena's heart clenched as she realized these indicated those who hadn't made it. One ledger contained detailed records, June 3, 1863. Solomon and family wife Ruth, children aged 4 and 7, arrived in poor health. Ruth's feet badly injured from walking, treated with tincture and wrapped. Hid here 6 days until patrol passed. Successfully moved to Thompson Station. June 19, 1863. Mary and infant son arrived. Baby coughing badly, dangerous to move. Catherine, Mrs. Blackwood, visited under pretense of inspecting quarters, brought medicine hidden in sewing basket. Both recovered. Moved north July 2nd. Catherine Blackwood. The plantation owner's wife had been part of the Underground Railroad. She'd risked not just her social standing but her life to help escaped slaves. Among the papers, Elena found a small leather-bound journal. The handwriting was different, more feminine, more hurried. I cannot reconcile the man I married with the cause he serves. Josiah speaks of property rights and states sovereignty, while human beings suffer in our fields. When this war ends, and pray God it ends with freedom for all, I will confess my activities. Until then, this chamber serves God's work, not man's law. It was signed simply, CB. Another entry made Elena's eyes blur with tears. Tonight a girl no older than 10 arrived alone. She had walked from the Harrison plantation 20 miles through swamp and forest. Her back bore fresh whip marks. As I treated her wounds, she sang softly a song her mother had taught her, the same lullaby I sing to my own children. How can Josiah not see? How can any of them not see? We are all God's children. Mom, Sophie's voice called from above, snapping Elena back to the present. You've been gone forever. Are you okay? Elena carefully returned the documents to their wrappers, her mind spinning with implications. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a full station on the Underground Railroad, complete with medical supplies, detailed records, and evidence of a network that had saved dozens, possibly hundreds of lives. I'm coming, sweetheart, she called, climbing the worn steps with care. I found something important. Back in the trailer, Sophie had managed to unpack her books and arrange her stuffed animals on the sagging couch. Her eyes widened as Elena described what lay beneath the floor. Like in the movies? Sophie asked, leaning forward in her wheelchair. Secret passages and everything. Better than the movies, Sophie. This is real history, real people who helped other people find freedom. Can I see? Elena hesitated. The steps were steep, the chamber not wheelchair accessible. Soon, baby. First we need to make it safe. And we need to tell the right people so it's protected. Sophie nodded solemnly. It's important, isn't it, like Dad used to say? We have to remember history so we don't repeat the bad parts. That's exactly right, Elena said, kissing her daughter's forehead. You're so smart, just like your father. That night, as rain drummed on the trailer's metal roof, Elena worked by lamplight to clean and organize their new home. She'd covered the entrance to the chamber with a piece of plywood and Sophie's rug, but her mind kept drifting to what lay beneath. She thought about Raymond Miller, the veteran who'd fled in the night. Had he heard actual voices, some acoustic quirk of the chamber that carried sound? Or had the weight of history itself driven him away? Not everyone was comfortable confronting the past, especially parts of it that revealed such profound injustice and equally profound courage. At midnight, after Sophie was asleep on the makeshift bed Elena had created from cushions and blankets, she carefully descended once more into the chamber. She needed to catalog what was there, create a proper inventory. Her teacher's instincts demanded it, but more than that, she felt a responsibility to the people who'd risked everything in this space. In one corner, she found a child's wooden doll, crudely carved but worn smooth by small hands. On a shelf, a Bible with margin notes in multiple handwritings. Medicine bottles with faded labels, laudanum willow bark, extract carbolic acid, tools for treating wounds and illness in secret without access to proper medical care. Behind one shelf, she discovered a loose brick. Inside the hiding space was a small leather pouch. Elena's hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a collection of coins, gold and silver, and a note. For the journey north. May God speed you to freedom. C.B. Catherine Blackwood had hidden escape funds for the fugitives. The coins were worth a fortune now, not just monetarily, but historically. Each one represented hope sacrificed, the price of freedom measured in gold. As Elena climbed back to the trailer, she realized she'd been crying. The weight of history, the courage of those who'd passed through this chamber, the desperation of families torn apart by slavery, it all crashed over her like a wave. But mixed with the sorrow was something else. Hope. The same hope that had driven escaped slaves north, that had motivated Catherine Blackwood to risk everything, that had kept this secret safe for over 150 years, until it could surface at just the right moment. Elena looked at Sophie sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling steadily. They'd lost so much. Michael, their home, their stability. But here in this rundown trailer above a piece of American history, they'd found something invaluable. Tomorrow she would call her old professor, Dr. Margaret Hamilton. Tomorrow she would begin the careful process of revealing this discovery to the world. Tomorrow she would start fighting to preserve this site and share its stories. But tonight, Elena Carson, widow, mother, protector of history, sat in a rusted trailer and felt the presence of all who'd come before. The freedom seekers, the secret helpers, the brave souls who'd risked everything for justice. Their voices seemed to carry on the Georgia wind and seep up through the floorboards, whispering a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unexpected places, waiting for the right person to find them. The chamber below held more than artifacts. It held proof that ordinary people could do extraordinary things, that courage came in many forms, that hope could survive even the darkest chapters of history. And for a struggling single mother who'd spent her last $300 on a chance at shelter, it held the promise of salvation, not just financial, but spiritual. She'd been chosen by history itself to be the guardian of these stories, the voice for those who'd been silenced. The rain continued to fall, drumming its ancient rhythm on the trailer's roof. But inside, warmed by possibility and purpose, Elena Carson began to plan a future built on the foundation of the past. The terminal beneath was no longer just history, it was hope. Based on my research on effective YouTube scripts for older audiences, I'll now continue with part 2 of your script. I'll maintain the cinematic writing style with emotional impact, good pacing, and minimal but impactful dialogue that appeals to male viewers 60+ in the US. The morning light filtered through the cracked blinds of trailer number 17, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Elena sat at the small kitchen table, Raymond Miller's notebook spread before her. She'd been up since dawn, poring over his meticulous records of the voices he'd heard. Sophie was still asleep, her breathing steady and peaceful in the makeshift bed Elena had created from couch cushions and blankets. For a moment, Elena simply watched her daughter, marveling at the resilience of children. Here they were living in a rusted trailer with holes in the floor, and Sophie had arranged her stuffed animals as if they were in a palace. The trapdoor in Sophie's room beckoned like a siren song. Elena had covered it with a piece of plywood and the threadbare rug they'd brought from their apartment, but knowing what lay beneath made it impossible to ignore. She'd promised herself she would wait for Dr. Hamilton before exploring further, but the historian in her, the part that had once led archaeological digs with students, couldn't resist. Carefully, she lifted the rug and plywood, exposing the square opening that led to another century. The wooden steps creaked beneath her weight as she descended, her phone's flashlight illuminating the brick chamber. In daylight, with the initial shock faded, Elena noticed details she'd missed the night before. The brickwork wasn't just functional, it was masterful. Each brick had been laid with precision, the mortar joints thin and even, the work of skilled hands. The ceiling was reinforced with oak beams, weathered but still solid after more than 150 years. What struck her most was the ventilation system, small shafts cleverly disguised as drainage, providing fresh air without revealing the chamber's existence. One shaft led up through the wall, likely connecting to what would have been a chimney in the plantation house. Another angled toward what must have been a well house, allowing voices to travel up through what anyone would assume was an echo from the water below. "Ingenious," Elena whispered, running her fingers along the bricks. "They thought of everything." She moved to examine the shelves more thoroughly. The medicine bottles revealed a sophisticated understanding of medical treatments, not just folk remedies but proper pharmaceuticals of the era. One bottle, labeled quinine powder, still contained traces of the malaria treatment. Another held dried willow bark, nature's aspirin. Behind a loose brick near the floor, Elena discovered a small wooden box. Inside lay a Civil War-era revolver, a Colt Navy model 1851, remarkably preserved in its hiding place. Beside it, a folded piece of paper contained a hand-drawn map of the surrounding area, with markings she now recognized as Underground Railroad symbols. A church with a cross indicating a safe house, a wagon wheel representing transportation routes, a butterfly showing a path to freedom. "Mom!" Sophie's voice called from above. "Where are you?" Elena carefully replaced the box and hurried up the steps. "Down here, baby. I was just checking something." Sophie had maneuvered her wheelchair to the edge of the opening, her curious eyes peering down. "I want to see too." "The steps are too steep for your chair," Elena said, climbing back into the trailer. "But I have an idea. Let me bring some things up to show you." Over the next hour, Elena carefully transported select items from the chamber to the kitchen table, the wooden doll, a brass button that might have come from a Union uniform, and Catherine Blackwood's journal opened to a particularly moving entry, April 18, 1863. "Tonight, I treated a young man whose back bore the most terrible scars I have ever witnessed. 20 years old, he had attempted escape twice before. When I asked why risk death a third time, he said simply, 'Because living without freedom isn't living at all.' I bandaged his wounds while Josiah slept not 50 yards above us, never suspecting his wife's treachery. Am I a traitor to my husband? Or is he the traitor to humanity? I no longer know where duty lies, only that I cannot turn away these desperate souls." Sophie listened intently as Elena explained what each item meant, her young mind grappling with concepts of slavery, freedom, and courage that most adults struggled to comprehend. "Mrs. Blackwood was like a spy?" Sophie asked, carefully examining the wooden doll. "In a way," Elena nodded. "She pretended to support one side while secretly helping the other. She risked everything, her marriage, her social position, even her life." "Like when Dad helped those people escape the fire," Sophie said quietly. Michael had died saving a family from their burning apartment building, rushing back inside when he heard children crying. It was the kind of man he'd been, the kind who couldn't turn away from suffering. Yes, baby, exactly like that. A sharp knock at the door interrupted their historical exploration. Elena quickly gathered the artifacts, hiding them in a kitchen cabinet before answering. Harold Jenkins stood on the small porch, his Vietnam veteran cap pulled low over his eyes. Behind him, a well-dressed woman in her 50s waited beside a luxury SUV that looked wildly out of place in the Riverbank trailer park. "Mrs. Carson," Jenkins nodded. "This lady says she's interested in buying your trailer. Told her it wasn't for sale, but she insisted on speaking with you directly." The woman stepped forward, extending a manicured hand. "Victoria Pembroke Development. May I come in?" Elena hesitated, then stepped aside. Victoria Pembroke swept into the trailer, her designer suit and pearl necklace in stark contrast to the faded wallpaper and worn furniture. She made a show of looking around, but Elena could tell she had no interest in the trailer itself. "Mrs. Carson, I'll be direct. Our company is developing a shopping complex on the adjacent property. We're interested in acquiring this entire trailer park." "The park's not for sale," Jenkins interjected from the doorway. "Told you that already, Miss Pembroke." "Everything's for sale at the right price," Victoria countered smoothly. "And individual trailers can be relocated. Mrs. Carson, we'd be prepared to offer you considerable compensation to move, enough to find much better accommodations for you and your daughter." Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet, but not in the way Victoria intended. "This is my home. We're not interested in moving." "You haven't heard our offer. Given the condition of this particular unit, we could go as high as $10,000 for relocation expenses. Cash. $10,000. 2 months ago, that would have solved everything." Now standing above what might be the most significant underground railroad discovery in decades, Elena felt the universe's ironic timing. "Thank you, but no." Victoria's smile flickered. "I see. Well, the offer stands, Mr. Jenkins. Perhaps you could explain to your new tenant the reality of maintaining a property like this. The costs can be overwhelming." After they left, Elena stood in the morning sun processing the encounter. Pembroke Development. She'd need to research them, understand what she was potentially up against. But first, she had a call to make. Dr. Margaret Hamilton answered on the third ring. "Elena. My God, how are you? I heard about Michael. I'm so sorry." "Thank you, Margaret." Elena took a deep breath. "I need your help. I found something. Something big." She spent the next 20 minutes describing the discovery, sending photos as she talked. The silence on the other end grew heavier with each revelation. "Elena," Dr. Hamilton finally said, her voice shaking. "If this is authentic, and from what you're showing me it appears to be, this could be the find of the decade. The Blackwood Plantation Underground Railroad Station was a legend. Historians have speculated about it for years, but no physical evidence had ever been found. What do I do? First, secure the site. Don't let anyone else in that chamber until I get there. I'm canceling my classes today. Expect me by noon. And Elena, this could change everything for you." After the call, Elena found Sophie in the living room carefully arranging her meager collection of books on a wobbly shelf. The simple domesticity of the scene, her daughter trying to make a home in chaos, strengthened Elena's resolve. "Baby, some important people are coming today to look at what Mommy found. I need you to be my special helper, okay?" Sophie nodded solemnly. "Will they help us keep our house?" The question cut deep. At 6, Sophie understood more about their precarious situation than Elena wished. "I think so, sweetheart. I really think so." By 11, Elena had cleaned the main living areas as best she could and created a detailed map of the chamber's layout. She'd also started a journal documenting everything she remembered about finding the space. Her historian's training kicked in. Provenance was everything in authenticating a discovery. A knock interrupted her writing. Through the window, she saw a man she didn't recognize. Tall, African-American, mid-40s, wearing a university windbreaker. Mrs. Carson, I'm Dr. William Lawrence from the Atlanta History Center. Margaret Hamilton called me. Said I needed to see this immediately. Elena hesitated. She didn't mention anyone else was coming. She's stuck in traffic, construction on I-75. She asked me to come ahead, start the preliminary assessment. He showed his credentials. I specialize in antebellum archaeology and underground railroad sites. If this is what Margaret thinks it is, you've made a discovery that could rewrite textbooks. His excitement seemed genuine, and his credentials checked out. Elena led him inside, watching his face change as she revealed the entrance to the chamber. My God, he breathed. The construction alone. This is definitely period correct. He looked at her with something approaching awe. You found this yesterday. The floor was rotted when I pulled up the carpet. Elena gestured helplessly. I'm a history teacher. Was. I knew it was significant. Dr. Lawrence descended carefully, his excitement palpable. Elena followed, watching as he examined the walls, the shelves, the artifacts she'd carefully replaced. The brick pattern is consistent with 1840s construction, he murmured. These torch brackets, hand-forged iron, and the layout. He turned in a slow circle. This matches descriptions from the Caldwell letters. Caldwell letters. Private correspondence between Underground Railroad conductors. Jeremiah Caldwell mentioned a secure room beneath Blackwood's very feet, but historians assumed it was metaphorical. His hands shook as he photographed the chamber. May I see the documents? Elena showed him the wrapped bundles, watching as he carefully examined the papers with gloved hands she hadn't noticed him put on. Catherine Blackwood, he said softly. We suspected she was sympathetic to the cause, but this proves she was an active conductor. Do you understand what this means? The wife of one of Georgia's largest slave owners was secretly helping slaves escape, the courage that must have taken. Dr. Lawrence. Elena began, then stopped. Something felt off. His examination was thorough, professional, but there was an undercurrent of urgency that seemed excessive. Her phone rang. Dr. Hamilton, Elena said, answering quickly. Elena, whatever you do, don't let anyone into that chamber. There's something you need to know about Pembroke Development. They're not just building a shopping center. They're specifically acquiring historic properties. There's been speculation about... The line crackled with static. Margaret. Elena looked at her phone. No signal. That was odd. She'd had 3 bars a moment ago. Problem? Dr. Lawrence asked, still examining documents. Phone died. Mrs. Carson. The voice came from above. A woman descended the steps. Victoria Pembroke, but her demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the fake warmth, replaced by cold efficiency. I apologize for the deception, but when Harold mentioned you'd found something in the floor, well, we had to act quickly. You're not from the History Center, Elena said to Lawrence, though it wasn't a question. Oh, I am, he replied carefully, setting down the documents. I just have a more flexible arrangement with certain parties. Pembroke Development funds my research in exchange for first rights to significant finds. These artifacts belong in a museum, Elena protested, moving between them and the documents. They'll be preserved, Victoria assured her. Privately, but preserved. And you'll be well compensated. $50,000 for your silence and cooperation. That's enough for a real home for your daughter, proper medical care, a fresh start. Absolutely not. Elena's teacher voice emerged, the one that could quiet a classroom of 30 teenagers. This site is historically significant. People need to know. People will know what we decide they should know, Victoria interrupted. Mr. Lawrence here will authenticate select pieces. A nice story about the Pembroke Corporation's commitment to preserving history. Everyone wins. Get out, Elena said quietly. Both of you, now. Lawrence looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Carson, you don't understand. Pembroke has been tracking potential Underground Railroad sites for years. The shopping center is just cover. They're assembling a private collection that exploits history for profit, Elena finished. Reduces courage and sacrifice to commodity. Get out. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I offered you a fortune. Remember that when you're evicted for code violations, when Child Services questions whether a mold-infested trailer is suitable for a disabled child, when... Is that a threat? A new voice, older, authoritative. Dr. Margaret Hamilton descended the steps, and she wasn't alone. Behind her were two uniformed police officers and a man in a National Park Service jacket. Sorry I'm late, Dr. Hamilton said to Elena. I made some calls on the way. She fixed Victoria with a stare that could freeze blood. Miss Pembroke, I believe you're familiar with the Archaeological Resources Protection Act. Attempting to remove artifacts from a potential National Historic Site is a federal crime. This is private property, Victoria protested, which may soon be subject to federal protection. The Park Service official stepped forward. Agent Ramirez, National Park Service. Dr. Hamilton contacted us about a significant discovery. I'll need both of you to leave while we secure the site. Lawrence set down the document he'd been holding. This is all a misunderstanding. I was simply conducting a preliminary... Save it for your review board, Dr. Hamilton snapped. I've already contacted the university. Your flexible arrangements are about to become very public. As Pembroke and Lawrence were escorted out, Elena sank onto the bottom step, adrenaline leaving her shaky. You okay? Dr. Hamilton asked, sitting beside her. That escalated quickly. Welcome to the world of historic preservation. Big money, competing interests, and occasional criminals. She looked around the chamber with wonder. But Elena, this is extraordinary. Better than I imagined. Agent Ramirez was photographing everything. We'll need to bring in a full archaeological team. This site will need protection while we process the National Register application. Mrs. Carson, you may have found one of the most intact underground railroad stations in the South. What does that mean for us? Elena asked. My daughter and I, we need... It means, Dr. Hamilton said gently, that you're about to become caretakers of a national treasure. There are grants, federal funds for site preservation. Universities will want to fund research here. Museums will compete for exhibition rights. She squeezed Elena's hand. You did the right thing calling me. They climbed back to the trailer where Sophie waited, eyes wide. Mom, were those bad people? No, baby, just confused people, but these are friends. Elena introduced Dr. Hamilton and Agent Ramirez, watching Sophie relax at their warm manner. Your mom's a hero, Dr. Hamilton told Sophie. She found something very important. I know, Sophie said proudly. She's good at finding important things. She found my dad when everyone else gave up looking. Elena's eyes filled. After Michael's accident, when the other car had left the scene, she'd spent weeks working with police tracking down witnesses until they'd found the drunk driver. She'd never realized Sophie had understood her determination. Well, Agent Ramirez said, we need to establish a perimeter. This is now a protected archaeological site. Dr. Lawrence had the right idea about one thing. We need to move fast. Once word gets out, we'll have treasure hunters, media, all sorts of interest. Where will we live? Sophie asked in a small voice. Right here, the agent assured her. This is your home. We'll just make sure it's very well protected. Over the next hours, the trailer park transformed. Federal vehicles arrived, creating a secure perimeter. Archaeological equipment was unloaded. Media began gathering at the park entrance, held back by security. Dr. Hamilton worked with Elena to catalog the initial findings. Each document was photographed, its location mapped. The coins Catherine Blackwood had hidden were confirmed as authentic, their value both monetary and historical immense. Look at this, Dr. Hamilton said, showing Elena a ledger entry. July 1863, 20 souls delivered to the Promise of Jordan. That's code. Jordan meant Canada. 20 people in 1 month. This was a major station. As afternoon wore on, more experts arrived. Dr. James Wilson, a 70-year-old local historian and Civil War expert. Professor Angela Martinez from Howard University. Each reacted with the same awe Elena had felt. The preservation is remarkable. Dr. Wilson noted, examining a brass button from a Union soldier's uniform. The oilcloth wrapping the brick construction, it created a perfect microclimate. These documents should have deteriorated decades ago. Yet the former Marine colonel ran his fingers reverently over the Colt Navy revolver Elena had found. This belonged to an officer. See the engraving on the barrel, beautiful piece probably carried by someone sympathetic to the cause. Agent Ramirez pulled Elena aside. We need to discuss protection. You and your daughter may need to relocate temporarily while we… No. Elena's voice was firm. This is our home. Sophie's been through enough upheaval. I understand. But there are security concerns. Once this goes public, then increase security here. We're not leaving. That evening, as the sun set over Freedomville, Elena sat with Dr. Hamilton in the trailer's small kitchen. Sophie was in her room video chatting excitedly with her grandmother about the day's events. The Pembroke situation, Elena began. How did they know? Dr. Hamilton sighed. There's an underground market, pardon the expression, in historical artifacts. Collectors who will pay millions for authentic pieces. Pembroke's been suspected of acquiring sites, extracting valuable items, then developing the land, but Lawrence will likely lose his position. Using academic credentials for private gain violates every ethical standard we have. She paused. You could have taken their money. No one would have known. Everyone would have known, Elena corrected. Everyone who hid in that chamber, everyone who risked their lives for freedom, their stories deserve to be told properly. That's why this will work out for you. Integrity matters in this field. Dr. Hamilton pulled out her tablet. I've been making calls. The National Trust for Historic Preservation is interested. There's emergency funding available for site protection, and several universities want to discuss research partnerships. What about Sophie? Her medical needs will be covered. Sites of national significance come with federal support. Health insurance, educational funds, housing assistance. You'll be official caretakers with salary and benefits. Elena felt tears coming. Relief, exhaustion, joy mixing into emotional overload. Yesterday I had $300 and no hope. Today, you're guardian of American history. Dr. Hamilton smiled. Life's funny that way. A knock interrupted them. Agent Ramirez entered with a laptop. Mrs. Carson, the Secretary of the Interior, wants to speak with you. This discovery is that significant. As Elena was connected to the video call, she thought about the morning's desperation. Victoria Pembroke had offered her escape money to run from problems, but running had never been Elena's way. She'd stayed and fought for Michael's justice. She'd stayed and fought for Sophie's care. Now she'd stay and fight for the voices history had silenced. Mrs. Carson, the secretary began. I understand you've made a remarkable discovery, one that could reshape our understanding of the Underground Railroad network. I just pulled up some rotted floorboards, Elena said honestly. The people who deserve recognition are those who built that chamber, who risked everything to help others reach freedom. Well said. We're fast-tracking the National Historic Landmark designation. There will be challenges, legal processes, preservation requirements, but we'll provide full support. Thank you, sir. No, Mrs. Carson. Thank you. Sites like this remind us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that courage isn't limited to battlefields. After the call, Elena found Sophie in her room surrounded by books Dr. Hamilton had brought. Children's stories about the Underground Railroad. Mom, were we like them? Sophie asked suddenly. The people who hid, Elena considered the question. How do you mean, sweetheart? We were running too, from the bills and the mean landlord and not having enough food sometimes, and we found a hiding place. The parallel hadn't occurred to Elena, but Sophie's 6-year-old wisdom saw clearly. I suppose we were baby. Sometimes people need refuge for different reasons. And now we get to help tell their stories. Yes. Elena smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. We're the storytellers now. As night fell, the trailer park settled into a strange new rhythm. Federal security patrolled the perimeter. Archaeologists worked in shifts carefully documenting the chamber by floodlight. Media vans lined the street outside, their reporters speaking in hushed tones about the significance of the find. Elena stood at her window watching it all with a mixture of wonder and worry. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Pembroke development wouldn't give up easily. The media attention would be overwhelming. The pressure to commercialize the discovery would be intense. But tonight she felt the presence of those who'd come before, Catherine Blackwood risking everything to follow conscience over convention. The unnamed heroes who'd built the chamber. The freedom seekers who'd hidden in darkness while dreaming of light. "We're safe now," she whispered to them. "Your stories are safe." "Mom," Sophie called from her room. "Can you tell me more about the brave lady who helped people escape?" Elena smiled, heading to her daughter's bedside. Some stories were worth telling again and again, passing from one generation to the next, like torches in the darkness. As she began to speak about courage and compassion, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, she felt the weight of history transform into wings of hope. The chamber below was no longer a secret. It was a testament, a classroom, a bridge between past and future. And Elena Carson, who'd bought a trailer with her last $300, had become its guardian and voice. Outside, the October moon rose over Freedomville, illuminating a small trailer that held enormous truths. The same moon had witnessed escape and capture, fear and hope, endings and beginnings. Now it watched over a new chapter, one where the silenced would speak, the hidden would be revealed, and a struggling family would find purpose in preservation. The Underground Railroad had saved lives in the 1860s. Now, 160 years later, it would save two more. Not through physical escape, but through the power of story, the value of truth, and the enduring principle that some things matter more than money. Elena tucked Sophie in, kissing her forehead gently. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and contracts, interviews and investigations. But tonight, in a trailer above history, a mother and daughter were home, safe, connected to something larger than themselves. The voices Raymond Miller had heard were real, not ghosts, but echoes of courage, whispers of hope that had waited patiently for the right person to listen. Elena Carson had listened, and now the whole world would hear. As she returned to the kitchen where Dr. Hamilton was still working, Elena felt Michael's presence strongly. Her husband had always believed in purpose and providence, in the idea that life's hardest moments often preceded its greatest gifts. "Thank you," she whispered to his memory, "for teaching me to stay strong, to stay faithful, to stay." The discovery in the chamber was remarkable, but the true revelation was simpler. Sometimes salvation comes not from running away, but from digging deeper. Not from selling out, but from standing firm. Not from forgetting the past, but from embracing its lessons. The trailer might be rusted. The floor might have holes. But beneath it all lay truth, courage, and the promise of redemption. Elena Carson had bought more than a home. She'd purchased a purpose. And that, as the freedom seekers below had known, was priceless. 6 weeks after Elena's discovery, the Riverbank trailer park had undergone a metamorphosis that even the most optimistic observer couldn't have predicted. Where rusted trailers once stood in isolated decay, a transformation was taking place that would soon make this forgotten corner of Georgia one of the most significant historical sites in America. Elena stood on the newly constructed wooden deck attached to her trailer, watching as archaeologists carefully excavated additional chambers they'd discovered extending from the original room. The network was more extensive than anyone had imagined. 3 connected chambers that had housed dozens of freedom seekers at a time, complete with ventilation shafts ingeniously disguised as root cellars. "Mrs. Carson," a young graduate student approached, her face flushed with excitement. "We found something you need to see." Elena followed her to excavation site C, where Dr. Hamilton waited with barely contained enthusiasm. The archaeologist held up a small leather journal, its pages yellowed but intact. "It's Catherine Blackwood's personal diary," Dr. Hamilton breathed, "hidden in a wall cavity. Listen to this. Today marks the 100th soul we've guided to freedom. Josiah grows more suspicious, but I've convinced him my frequent illnesses require daily walks for constitution. If he knew these walks take me to the chambers below our very feet. Elena felt the familiar chill of connection to the past. Each discovery added layers to their understanding of the Underground Railroad's operations, but also to Catherine Blackwood's courage. The woman had lived a double life for years, married to a slaveholder, while secretly undermining the very system that supported their wealth. "Mom," Sophie's voice carried across the site. Elena turned to see her daughter wheeling herself down the new ramp, her face bright with purpose. The transformation in Sophie had been as remarkable as the sight itself. When struggling with feelings of helplessness, she'd become the unofficial junior historian of the project, greeting visitors and sharing the stories they'd uncovered. "The film crew is here," Sophie announced. "They want to interview you about the letter." The letter? Elena still felt overwhelmed by its implications, found just 2 days ago. It was correspondence between Catherine Blackwood and Frederick Douglass himself, discussing the strategic importance of the Freedomville station. Douglass had called it the heartbeat of Georgia's path to freedom. As Elena walked toward the documentary crew, she passed the new Visitors Center, a modest building erected with National Park Service funds. Inside, the first exhibits were being installed, including reproductions of the documents she'd found that first night. The originals were being preserved in climate-controlled storage, but the stories they told were being shared with the world. "Mrs. Carson," the director. An earnest woman named Rebecca Stone greeted her. "Can we film you in the original chamber? The lighting down there is perfect for capturing the emotion of your discovery." "Of course," Elena agreed. She'd grown comfortable with the media attention, understanding that every interview, every documentary, helped ensure the site's protection and funding. Descending into the chamber still gave her goosebumps. LED lights now illuminated the space, revealing details invisible that first night. Names carved into bricks, tally marks counting days in hiding, and in one corner a child's drawing scratched into the wall showing stick figures holding hands beneath stars. "Tell us about that first night," Rebecca prompted as cameras rolled. Elena had told the story dozens of times, but it never felt routine. "I was desperate," she began honestly. "We'd lost everything. That $300 was all we had left. When I found the soft spot in the floor, I was worried about repair costs, not historical discoveries." "But something made you look deeper. Maybe instinct, maybe desperation." Elena paused, thinking of Raymond Miller's notebooks they'd found filled with his certainty that voices called from below. Maybe the ones who hid here weren't done telling their stories. "You've become quite the philosopher," Rebecca noted with a smile. "History does that to you, especially this history." Elena ran her hand along the brick wall. These people risked everything for an idea. That freedom was worth any danger, any sacrifice. How do you discover something like that and not be changed? The interview continued, covering familiar ground: the Pembroke development threat, the federal intervention, the ongoing discoveries. But Rebecca asked a new question that made Elena pause. "Your husband was an immigrant from Honduras. Do you see parallels between these historical refugees and modern ones?" Elena considered carefully. "Michael used to say that borders are just lines on maps, but freedom is written on hearts. The people who hid here were refugees in their own country, fleeing violence and oppression. So yes, I see parallels. The courage required to leave everything behind, to risk everything for hope of a better life, that's universal. And now you're preserving their stories." "We're not just preserving them," Elena corrected. "We're continuing them. This site isn't a monument to the past, it's a bridge to the future." After the interview, Elena found Sophie in the Visitors Center, leading a group of school children through the exhibits. Her daughter's clear voice carried across the room. "And this is the doll we found. We think a little girl named Lucy left it behind. She was 7 years old, just like me, when she hid here with her mama. They were scared, but they were brave too. Being scared and brave at the same time is okay." The teacher accompanying the children wiped away tears. Sophie had that effect on people. Her wheelchair seemed to disappear when she spoke about courage overcoming adversity. Dr. Hamilton appeared at Elena's elbow. She's a natural educator like her mother. She wants to be a historian now. Last month it was a marine biologist. Why not both? The world needs Renaissance women. Dr. Hamilton checked her tablet. Speaking of which, we need to discuss the university proposals. Yale wants to establish a permanent research center here. Harvard's offering a joint program, and Emory wants to name the site after you. I know. Elena felt uncomfortable with the attention. Shouldn't it be named after Catherine Blackwood, or the people who escaped through here? The Carson Blackwood Freedom Center has a nice ring to it. Dr. Hamilton suggested honoring both past and present courage. Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a blocked number. Ms. Carson. This is Thomas Pembroke, Victoria's father. Elena tensed. If this is about... Please hear me out. I'm calling to apologize. Victoria's methods were inexcusable, but I also want to propose something different. Pembroke Development has resources you need. We'd like to fund a permanent museum on the site with you as director. Full creative control, generous salary, and most importantly, protection from future development. Why would you do that? There was a pause. My great-great-grandmother was Catherine Blackwood's sister. I've known about the chambers my whole life but thought they were destroyed. When Victoria told me what she tried to do, his voice cracked. Some things matter more than profit, Miss Carson. Let me make this right. Elena felt the ground shift again. I need to think about it. Of course. But know this. With or without our involvement, you've earned my deepest respect. What you've done, what you're doing, it honors all our ancestors. After hanging up, Elena stood in stunned silence. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with surprises. That evening, as the site closed to visitors, Elena convened what had become their nightly ritual. She, Sophie, Dr. Hamilton, and Agent Ramirez, who'd become more protector than prosecutor, gathered in the trailer's kitchen for dinner and discussion. Pembroke wants to fund a museum, Elena announced, still processing the offer. Ramirez nearly choked on his coffee. The same Pembroke who tried to steal artifacts. The father, not the daughter, Elena clarified. He claims family connection to Catherine Blackwood. We can verify that, Dr. Hamilton said, already typing. If it's true, it adds another layer to the story. 2 branches of a family, one preserving slavery, one fighting it. Very American. What do you think, sweetheart? Elena asked Sophie. Her daughter considered gravely. Sometimes people do bad things but then try to fix them. Like when Tommy pushed me at school but then became my friend. Maybe they want to be good now. From the mouths of babes, Ramirez muttered. The conversation was interrupted by a knock. Harold Jenkins stood at the door, hat in hand, looking unusually formal. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you all should know. I've been made an offer for the trailer park. Big company wants to buy the whole thing. Elena's heart sank. After everything. But Jenkins continued. I'm not selling. Not if it means disturbing what you've built here. He shifted uncomfortably. My grandfather worked the Blackwood plantation. Never talked about it much, but I remember him saying there were good white folks who helped when they could. Maybe that chamber saved one of my ancestors. Seems wrong to let it be destroyed now. The room fell silent, processing this unexpected solidarity. Elena found her voice first. Thank you, Harold. That means more than you know. He nodded gruffly. Besides, having a National Historic Site next door is good for property values. I'm not completely altruistic. But his smile softened the words. After Jenkins left, the group returned to planning. The site's future was securing itself piece by piece. Federal protection, academic partnerships, now potentially private funding from an unexpected source. But Elena knew the real security came from something else: community buy-in. When locals like Jenkins saw themselves in the story, the site became theirs to protect. We should expand the narrative, Elena suggested. Not just the Underground Railroad, but the ongoing story of freedom, Immigration, civil rights, modern struggles for justice. Make it relevant to today. A living museum. I like it, Dr. Hamilton mused. History isn't just what happened, it's what's happening. Can we have a freedom bell? Sophie asked suddenly. Like in Philadelphia. People could ring it when they become citizens, or when they escape bad situations, or just when they need hope. Agent Ramirez smiled. That's the best idea I've heard all week. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Elena sat alone in the chamber. LED lights could illuminate the space, but she preferred candles, imagining how it looked to those who'd hidden here, shadows dancing on brick walls, the smell of earth and fear and hope mingling in close air. She'd started a practice of reading aloud from the documents they'd found, giving voice to long silent stories. Tonight she read from a letter written by a young girl named Amelia. Mama says we leave tonight. I'm scared of the dark, but more scared of staying. The lady with kind eyes, Mrs. Catherine, gave me cornbread and said, "Brave girls grow up to change the world." I want to be brave. I want to change the world. Elena wondered what became of Amelia. Did she make it north? Did she grow up to change the world? The historical record was silent, but Elena chose to believe she had. You did change the world, she whispered to the shadows. Your courage brought me here, saved my family. Your story will inspire thousands. Footsteps on the stairs made her turn. Dr. Hamilton descended carrying 2 cups of tea. Couldn't sleep either, the professor asked, settling beside Elena. This place is addictive. Every time I come down here, I feel them, their presence, their courage. Elena accepted the tea gratefully. Do you think I'm doing right by them? All this attention, the tourism that'll come. You're giving them what was stolen, their voices, their place in history. That's all any of us want, isn't it? To be remembered, to matter. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea in a chamber that had sheltered so many. The transformation from hidden shame to celebrated shrine was nearly complete. But Elena knew the real change was internal. She'd arrived broke and desperate with nothing but $300 and fading hope. Now she was guardian of American heritage. Her daughter's future secured their story, intertwined with those who'd come before. The Pembroke offer, Dr. Hamilton ventured. If the connection is real, if his intentions are genuine, yes. Catherine Blackwood's descendant funding the museum feels like completion, reconciliation, the kind of healing America needs. Poetic justice, Dr. Hamilton agreed. The wealth built on slavery now preserving slavery's destruction. A text from Sophie lit up Elena's phone. Mom, are you in the chamber? I had a dream about Lucy. She says thank you. Elena smiled through sudden tears. Sophie had started having vivid dreams about the children who'd hidden here, creating elaborate stories about their lives. Whether imagination or something more, the dreams brought comfort and connection. Coming up, baby, Elena texted back. As she climbed the worn steps, Elena felt the weight of responsibility but also wings of purpose. 6 weeks ago, she'd been drowning. Now she was soaring, lifted by stories older than memory, but newer than tomorrow. The trailer still needed work. Pipes leaked, walls showed water damage. Electricity flickered. But FEMA had approved emergency housing funds, and contractors would start renovations next week. The irony wasn't lost on Elena. The government that had failed to help when she was simply poor now showered resources because she was historically significant. Back in the trailer, she found Sophie awake, sketchpad in her lap. Couldn't sleep. I was drawing the freedom bell. Sophie showed her the design, a bell surrounded by hands of different colors all reaching upward. Everyone who rings it adds their handprint, so it becomes a rainbow of all the people finding freedom. It's perfect, sweetheart. Do you think Daddy can see us? See what we're doing? Elena pulled her daughter close. I know he can, and he's proud, so proud. They sat together, mother and daughter, in a trailer that had become a bridge between worlds. Outside, security lights illuminated the excavation sites where more secrets waited to be discovered. Inside, two hearts beat with purpose, connected to the past, committed to the future. The transformation was nearly complete. But Elena understood now it would never truly end. Each visitor who descended those steps, each child who heard the stories, each bell that would ring, all continued the work Catherine Blackwood had started. Freedom wasn't a destination, but a journey, and the terminal that had once been endpoint was now a beginning. "Tell me about the brave lady again," Sophie requested, settling into her mother's arms. Elena began the story, but this time she wove in their own. How a widow and her daughter had found courage in a chamber of courage. How loss became purpose. How $300 had purchased priceless heritage. The October moon rose over Freedomville, the same moon that had witnessed escapes and arrivals, sorrow and celebration. In a trailer above history, stories merged and multiplied, past and present, dancing together toward a future bright with possibility. Catherine Blackwood had risked everything to say yes to justice. Elena Carson had said yes to survival and found herself guardian of that same justice. The transformation continued, rippling outward like bells of freedom, like hands reaching upward, like voices no longer silenced but singing. And in the chamber below, where shadows held memories and brick walls whispered truth, the Underground Railroad ran on. Not north to Canada now, but forward through time, carrying all who chose courage toward the promise of a better day. The site that had saved lives in 1863 was saving them still in 2025. Different dangers, same destination. The radical idea that all people deserved dignity, that freedom was birthright, that hope could survive any darkness if someone somewhere was brave enough to light a candle and say, "This way, follow me, you're safe here." Elena Carson had lit that candle. Now it would never go out. 1 year after Elena Carson spent her last $300 on a rusted trailer, she stood before an audience of 500 people gathered for the official dedication of the Catherine Blackwood National Historic Site and Freedom Center. The transformation was complete, yet in many ways it was just beginning. The trailer park had evolved into something unrecognizable from its former state. Where weeds once choked forgotten lots, manicured gardens now bloomed with heritage plants, cotton, tobacco, and vegetables that would have grown in the 1860s. The original trailers remained but restored and repurposed. One served as administrative offices, another as a research library, a third as an educational center, where Sophie now gave daily presentations to school children. Elena adjusted the microphone, looking out at the crowd. Dignitaries filled the front rows. The governor of Georgia, representatives from the Smithsonian, leaders from various historical societies. But her eyes found the faces that mattered most. Sophie in her custom wheelchair decorated with freedom bells, Dr. Hamilton beaming with professorial pride, Agent Ramirez, now Director Ramirez of the site's security, and surprisingly Thomas and Victoria Pembroke sitting together in reconciliation. A year ago, Elena began, her teacher's voice carrying clearly. I was a desperate mother with $300 looking for shelter. What I found instead was purpose. What my daughter and I discovered wasn't just a historical site. It was a reminder that ordinary people doing extraordinary things can change the world. The audience applauded, but Elena raised her hand for quiet. Today we dedicate this site not just to the past, but to the future. Not just to those who escaped slavery, but to all who seek freedom from oppression, poverty, and hopelessness. This ground is sacred not because of what was, but because of what can be. Behind her, the Freedom Bell, Sophie's design made reality through Pembroke funding, gleamed in the morning sun. Cast from bronze and silver, it bore the handprints of the first 100 visitors, creating the rainbow pattern Sophie had envisioned. Before we cut the ribbon, Elena continued, I want to share something we discovered just last week. The crowd leaned forward. Even after a year, the site continued revealing secrets. The latest discovery had come from the fifth chamber, accessed through what everyone had assumed was a sealed well. In the newest chamber, we found this. Elena held up a preserved piece of fabric, a quilt square part of the Underground Railroad's code system. This pattern, called flying geese, pointed escapees north, but on the back sewn in tiny stitches, we found a message. She paused, feeling the weight of history. Fear is the price of freedom, but courage is the currency of hope. Pay it forward. It was signed C.B. Catherine Blackwood. The silence was profound. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone began clapping slowly. Others joined the applause building until it thundered across the site. Elena saw tears on many faces, including her own. The ribbon cutting was ceremonial. The site had been operating informally for months, but the symbolism mattered. As the governor and Elena cut the blue silk together, the Freedom Bell rang for the first time, its clear tone carrying across Freedomville and beyond. Sophie had the honor of the first official ring. She wheeled herself to the bell's rope, paused, then pulled with all her strength. The sound that emerged seemed to contain multitudes. Sorrow for those who hadn't made it, joy for those who had hope, for those still seeking their own freedom. "For my daddy," Sophie said into the microphone, "who taught us that bridges connect more than places. They connect hearts." The dedication ceremony continued with presentations from scholars, the unveiling of a statue depicting Catherine Blackwood and an unnamed freedom seeker, and the first public tours of all 5 chambers. But Elena found herself drawn away from the crowds, needing a moment of solitude. She walked to the memorial garden, where a small marker bore Michael's name alongside those of the documented freedom seekers. The Pembroke Foundation had insisted on including it. "All who sacrificed for others belong here," Thomas had said. "We did it, mi amor," Elena whispered to the stone. "We're home." "Mrs. Carson." A tentative voice interrupted her reverie. Elena turned to find a young woman, early 20s, holding a baby. "Yes. I'm Amelia Johnson. My great-great-great-grandmother was Amelia Turner. The woman's voice broke. She escaped through here in 1863. We have her diary. She wrote about a lady who gave her cornbread and told her brave girls changed the world." Elena's knees went weak. Amelia, the girl whose letter she'd read alone in the chamber so many nights. She made it to Canada, then back to Chicago after the war. Became a teacher like you. Had 8 children, 23 grandchildren. We're scattered all over now. But when we heard about this place, tears flowed freely. We had to come. Had to say thank you. Elena embraced the woman, feeling the circle close, past and present, loss and redemption, all connected in this moment. "Would you like to see the chamber where she hid more than anything?" As they walked toward the entrance, Amelia continued, "I brought something from her diary." She shifted her baby. She wrote about the lady who helped them, Mrs. Catherine. Said she had eyes like storm clouds, but hands like morning sun, kind and fierce together. "Catherine Blackwood," Elena confirmed. "She saved so many." "She saved us, all of us who came after." Amelia shifted her baby. "This is Catherine, named for her." And then they descended into the first chamber together, LED lights revealing what candles once kept hidden. Amelia gasped, recognizing descriptions from her ancestor's diary. She wrote about that shelf, said Mrs. Catherine kept medicine there, and that corner where children would huddle together for warmth. Amelia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Great-great-great-grandma Amelia was 7, same age as my daughter will be." "Same age as Sophie was when we found this place," Elena added. The parallels weren't lost on either woman. They stood in silence, feeling the weight of generations. Then baby Catherine gurgled, breaking the spell with the insistence of new life. "The Freedom Bell," Elena suggested. "Would you like to ring it for your ancestor?" "Could I?" They returned to the surface where the dedication crowd was dispersing into tour groups. At the bell, Amelia handed her baby to Elena, then grasped the rope. "For all the Amelias," she said, and pulled. The tone that emerged seemed different this time, not mournful, but triumphant. Visitors paused, understanding they were witnessing something sacred. Sophie rolled over her face, bright with curiosity. "Mom, who's this?" Elena made introductions, watching Sophie's eyes widen as she understood the connection. You're her family, the brave girl's family. Sophie reached out to touch baby Catherine's hand. My mom reads her letters all the time. She says Amelia proves that scared kids can grow up to change everything. Would you? Amelia hesitated. Would you like to hold her, Catherine, I mean? Sophie nodded eagerly, and with careful maneuvering the baby was settled in her lap. The image, a child in a wheelchair holding the descendant of a child who'd once hidden below, captured everything the site represented. Dr. Wilson, Elena called to a passing photographer. Could you? The photo would later win a Pulitzer. Two children bridging centuries' hope cradled between them. But in the moment it was simply family extended across time and space by shared story. The afternoon brought unexpected revelations. During the VIP luncheon, Thomas Pembroke approached Elena with a folder. I've been researching family history since our first conversation, he began. What I found, well, it changes things. Elena opened the folder to find genealogical charts, letters, and a daguerreotype of Catherine Blackwood. Carolyn and I aren't just descendants of Catherine's sister, Thomas explained. We're descendants of Catherine herself. After the war, after Josiah died, she remarried a former slave named Samuel Turner. They had 3 children raised in the North. My great-grandmother was their youngest. Elena stared at the photograph. Catherine Blackwood in her later years, surrounded by mixed-race children, her storm-cloud eyes now peaceful. The family buried this history, Thomas continued. Too controversial for the times. But finding those chambers, seeing what you've done here, it's time for truth. Victoria joined them, her earlier hostility replaced by something approaching humility. I was wrong. About everything. The artifacts, the site. What matters is, we all have choices, Elena said carefully. What matters is what we choose now. Then I choose this. Victoria pulled out a document. Full funding for the site's expansion. The Academic Research Center, the new museum wing, the National Education Program. No strings, no conditions, just penance. The document outlined a $50 million endowment. Elena's hands shook as she read it. This is beyond generous. It's necessary, Thomas said firmly. Catherine Blackwood, our ancestor, risked everything for justice. We've profited from injustice long enough. Time to balance the scales. That evening, as sunset painted the site in golden light, Elena found herself back in the original chamber. So much had changed since that desperate night when she'd first descended these steps. The trailer above was now climate-controlled, structurally reinforced, transformed into a comfortable home. Sophie thrived in her new school, her medical needs fully covered by the site's benefits package. The repository of historical documents had grown into a major research center, attracting scholars worldwide. But the chamber itself remained unchanged, preserved exactly as found. Elena lit a candle, electric lights for tours, but flames for reflection. In the dancing shadows, she could almost see them. The frightened families, the brave conductors, the children clutching rough-carved dolls. Thank you, she whispered, for trusting me with your stories. Footsteps on the stairs, Sophie navigating carefully with her new prosthetic braces. Therapy funded by the site's medical coverage was giving her increased mobility. Mom, there's someone here to see you. Elena climbed up to find a delegation waiting. 3 women, different ages, all bearing the unmistakable mark of hard times survived. Mrs. Carson, the eldest spoke with a slight accent. We heard about what you've done, how you saved your home by finding history. We're facing eviction too. From the Pinewood Trailer Park 2 counties over. Developers want the land for condos. Elena's heart ached with recognition. I'm so sorry. How can I help? The thing is, another woman interjected. Pinewood sits on old land too. Tobacco plantation before the war. My grandson found some weird bricks in the creek bed. Could be nothing but... Could be something, Elena finished. She thought of Catherine Blackwood's quilt square, pay it forward. I'll come look, she promised. Bring Dr. Hamilton some equipment. If there's history there, we'll find it. After they left, Sophie tugged Elena's sleeve. Are we going to help them find their own chambers? If we can, yes. Good. Sophie's smile was pure Michael. Everyone deserves their miracle. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Elena sat at her kitchen table. The same table where she'd once spread final bills counting out $300. Now she reviewed expansion plans, educational proposals, research applications. The transformation still felt surreal. Her laptop chimed with an email from the Smithsonian. Congratulations! The Carson Family Collection has been approved for our permanent exhibition, Voices of Freedom, the Underground Railroad Revealed. Your story exemplifies how contemporary Americans connect with historical struggle. Elena closed the laptop. Awards were nice recognition, gratifying, but the real victory was simpler. Sophie's laughter echoing through their home. The security of knowing they'd never face eviction again. The purpose that filled each day with meaning. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Hamilton entered carrying 2 cups of her infamous strong coffee. Couldn't sleep, the professor asked. Too much to process. Did you see the Pembroke endowment, $50 million? That's generational wealth being returned to serve justice. It's what happens when truth meets conscience. Dr. Hamilton settled across from her. Speaking of which, I have news. The university's made their decision. They're offering you the directorship of the new Center for Underground Railroad Studies. Full professorship, research budget, the works. Elena stared. But I don't have a doctorate. You have something better. Lived experience bridging past and present. Your discoveries, your site management, your educational programs. Elena, you've become one of the foremost authorities on Underground Railroad preservation. I need to think. Of course. But consider this. Sophie could attend the university school best education possible. You'd have resources to help other sites, other families facing what you faced. Pay it forward, as Catherine Blackwood wrote. After Dr. Hamilton left, Elena walked through her transformed home. In Sophie's room, her daughter slept surrounded by books about brave girls changing the world. On the walls, her drawings showed the Freedom Bell, the chambers, and always people holding hands across time. Elena stepped onto the deck, gazing at the lights illuminating the historical site. Somewhere beneath 5 chambers held their eternal secrets. But they were no longer graves of silence. They were wombs of story, birthplaces of continued courage. The October moon rose full and bright, the same moon that had witnessed every escape, every return, every act of defiance and love. Elena thought of Catherine Blackwood risking everything for strangers, of Amelia Turner, 7 years old and brave beyond measure, of Michael, who'd believed in purposes bigger than self. Yes, she whispered to the moon, to the memories, to the future, waiting to unfold. Yes to all of it. Tomorrow she'd accept the university position. Tomorrow she'd visit Pinewood Trailer Park, searching for new history to save new families. Tomorrow Sophie would ring the Freedom Bell for visiting students sharing stories of courage across centuries. But tonight, Elena Carson, mother, teacher, guardian of sacred ground, stood witness to transformation complete yet ongoing. She'd bought a trailer for $300 and discovered that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in meaning, not in possessions, but in purpose. The Underground Railroad still ran, not through wooden chambers now, but through human hearts willing to say, this way to freedom, this way to hope, this way home. And in a trailer above, history lights burned bright against the darkness. Beacons for all still seeking their own last dollars, transformed into invaluable heritage, their own first steps toward legacy. The bell would ring tomorrow and the next day and all the days after. Each tone a reminder. What we think will break us might remake us. What seems like ending could be beginning. What appears worthless might be priceless. Pay it forward. The currency of hope. The price of freedom. Elena went inside, checked on Sophie one more time, then settled into bed in her transformed home. Through the window, stars watched over Freedomville. The same stars that had guided refugees north, that now guided visitors to understanding. Somewhere in those stars, Michael smiled. Somewhere in the chambers below, Catherine Blackwood rested in peace. And somewhere in America, another desperate mother counted out her last dollars, not knowing that miracles sometimes hide beneath rotted floors, waiting for brave hearts to find them. The terminal had saved them all, past, present, and future. The railroad ran on eternal and essential, powered by the simplest fuel, human beings choosing to help each other find their way home. Elena closed her eyes, listening to the heartbeat of history pulsing beneath her floor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new connections across time. Tonight she was exactly where she belonged. Guardian of stories, mother of hope, keeper of the keys to chambers that would never again hide in darkness, but would shine forever as beacons of what ordinary people could do when they chose courage over comfort, right over easy, love over fear. $300. A lifetime of purpose. A legacy beyond price. The transformation was complete. The journey had just begun.